AITA for not helping my girlfriend when she does not take her medication. My 25M girlfriend 24F has pretty bad ADHD. She is supposed to take medication daily to help manage it. However, sometimes she skips a day because either she forgets or chooses not to. The problem is that when she is off her meds, the ADHD is pretty bad. She will forget she put something on the stove, or if she sets a timer to remind herself to do something, she will just dismiss it without doing it. I used to help her by reminding her of food cooking, her meetings, other obligations, etc. But I have decided to stop. We read a book on ADHD relationships, and I realized that we were falling into a parent-child dynamic that I did not want. I have decided that I am not going to play the role of the parent anymore, and she is going to have to deal with the consequences of her actions. I have stopped reminding her of things, and over the past few weeks she has burned food, missed meetings, and now she is mad at me for not helping her when she forgets things. I told her that I am willing to help, but only if she is willing to help herself by taking her medication daily. As someone with ADHD, I am gonna say NTA. It is okay to need help with some things, absolutely. But it is not okay to rely on that while depriving yourself of the things medication and coping skills that typically make you independent. If she needs help remembering to take her medication, that might be one thing. But it is too much to ask you to organize and be in charge of her life because she just does not feel like taking it one day. The only thing I would say is you probably should still remind her of food left on the stove. That is a safety issue and you do not really want to risk setting the house on fire to prove a point, or turn the stove off when she walks away from it so her food just never finishes cooking. Adult with pretty intense ADHD here, and OP is not his GF's caretaker. If he wants to be really kind and helpful, the only thing OP should be reminding his GF is to take her medication. I cannot tell you how many times I forget to take my meds. I do not mean to not take them, I honestly just do not remember. Even with alarms, notes in the bathroom, and stickies on my computer, I still forget. My spouse reminds me sometimes. My kids can tell if I have not taken it. Even my co-workers can tell and they offer reminders. We are close-knit and friendly. I highly recommend that OPSGF buy an Amazon Echo. I set timers and alarms for everything on my Alexa, and I can ask say something in the moment, like Alexa set timer for 10 minutes, and then I am not responsible for having to remember to take the cookies out of the oven. Alexa reminds me. Also, I set Alexa alarms to take my meds and vitamins, to give myself 10, 5 and 2-minute warnings before meetings because if just then, I forget again, and also to go to bed reminder. You should go to bed in 30 minutes and then 20 and then 10 and then now it is time to go to bed, otherwise I will stay up all night because I do not transition well. I know it sounds super dumb to people without ADHD, but my Alexa really is a helpful tool. God, the night struggle. I cannot remember a time where I went to sleep within an hour rather than 3-4. Alexa is alright for everything apart from the medication. It is fine if the girlfriend is just forgetting to take them, but OP also said that she just decides not to take them sometimes. That is fine if a doctor recommended it, otherwise not so sure why she would just decide against it. Husband has ADHD, he got so sleep deprived, it was magnifying his issues. His doctor prescribed Lunesta and cognitive behavioral therapy for the insomnia. The therapy worked wonders after only a few months. He doesn't need the Lunesta anymore, and his symptoms have gotten much more under control. NTA, you are her boyfriend, not her secretary. She needs to take her meds every day or accept the consequences of her choices. This is probably the best thing for your relationship. Even if it ends, let it end fairly instead of turning into a toxic mess of codependency. ETA, thanks for the awards. Info has her doctor instructed her to skip the medication once a week. That is sometimes recommended with ADHD medication. In that case, YTA for not helping her out on those days at the very least. Turn off the stove so a fire does not start, if she is completely forgetting to take the medication. Can you help her come up with a system to remember it? Unfortunately, having ADHD makes it hard to remember things like taking your ADHD medication. Her brain does not work the same way yours does. If you are not willing to compromise on some things and help accommodate her, You should break up. If she were in a wheelchair and could not reach something on the top shelf of a cabinet, would you refuse to get it down for her? Info: you both read the book, but you said, I realized that we were falling into a parent-child dynamic that I didn't want to. I've decided I am not going to play the role of parent anymore. Did you actually communicate this to her, or did you just stop doing it without any acknowledgement? If you told her that you wouldn't be ensuring she follows through on her responsibilities anymore, you won't monitor her food, you won't remind her of meetings, and that she needs to be responsible for herself from now on. NTA. If you just suddenly stopped without actually saying anything, a gentle YTA, she probably wasn't expecting a sudden change. It's not wrong to want to change the dynamic. That's perfectly fair, but you have to actually express these things to her. How else is she supposed to know what you're rethinking? Sorry, not wanting to be her reminder box all the time if she chooses not to take her meds. Fair, not reminding her to take her meds when forgetting to take something is literally a symptom of ADHD. Not fair, unilaterally dropping all support without prior discussion with her. Massive. You developed a habit and support system and then suddenly changed that without any communication with your partner. Healthy boundaries are good. Leaving your partner floundering is bad. I did feel confused and abandoned if I were her. When she chooses not to NTA, when she genuinely forgets, which seems like it could be a symptom of her ADHD in the first place. I used to beg my doctor for a patch because I thought giving folks with ADHD yet another thing to remember was dumb. But insurance didn't pay for patches anyway. Eventually the doctor prescribed Adderall that I never abused. Destroyed my heart. They make patches for ADHD meds. I stopped taking mine once I went to college because they totally drained me of all personality, but I might need to go back on them soon, and I am terrible at remembering to take pills, so a patch would be perfect. They do, but I think they only for children, not dosed for 44-year-old scatterbrains. NTA, you have tried one system managing her meds and it failed, so you retaking a different approach, and your feeling about the unhealthy relationship dynamic that managing her health has is very reasonable, as long as all this has been openly discussed and communicated and you haven't abruptly withdrawn what you used to do for her. And she is aware that she needs to find some new systems, maybe some systems that you two could talk through together. Then this all sounds rational. It changed my verdict from not to NTA because I realized the GF is angry at OP. Nah, remind her to take the meds. If she then chooses not to, that's on her. If she honestly forgets and you remember but don't remind her, that's a move. If you were colorblind and she refused to help you differentiate black and navy with the reason of she's not your parent, you need to figure it out. How would that make you feel? Probably not very good. NTA, she has a special need. She is not stupid. You are also not her carer. She must have managed previously. Remind her you are not an enabler and she needs to consider a way of managing herself without relying on you. NTA, the great thing about technology today is that there are a ton of tools available to your GF to support her in remembering important things. She can make the choice to set alarms, set reminders, use an agenda calendar. It is perfectly reasonable to set boundaries around how much of that work you are willing to take on, especially if she is sometimes making the choice to skip her medication. NTA, you are not responsible for your girlfriend. She doesn't want to take her meds, then she needs to deal with the consequences. She has them for a reason. Good for you for recognizing what your relationship was turning into. Stay strong. NTA, I have ADHD, and I do not see it as the responsibility of other people around me to manage it. Been there, done that. Life is better if I carry myself. My only question is, did you tell her you were going to stop reminding her first? It is clear that you had a conversation after. Did you tell her before you decided to stop? If not, she was acting on established patterns in the relationship and has a right to be ticked off. You would be inadvertently creating just the kind of paternalistic dynamic you are trying to avoid. I have personal knowledge of this issue. My GF has the same problem. Some days she does not take her meds. We agree on these days together. It is good for her brain to have a day off, and a no pills day is a wild experience. pretty much as you suggest. I keep an eye on the stove and double check the doors are locked when we go to bed, and 100 other things. This should not read as parenting. For one thing, you are not teaching a kid how to do stuff, you are assisting someone with a disability. You probably should not bother mentioning you left the stove on, just turn it off. She is having a no-pills day, and if it experiences anything like hers, that means she is less able to follow a train of thought on that day than she was before medication. If you are not willing to take that on, then fine, not everyone is. What you should not be doing is acting like you are her partner. If you are not willing to accept a condition that is part of her, if you are going to continue in this relationship, you need to learn to accept that these days are going to happen, and you are going to have to take on looking out for her on those days. I do encourage the pair of you to plan those days ahead. It is not fair of her to essentially put the organizational burden on you without prior discussion. What is not acceptable is to remain in this relationship and allow her to fail through an unwillingness to help. Apart from how generally crappy that behavior is, people with ADD experience a symptom referred to as RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. This is a particular sensitivity to feelings of rejection. Your unwillingness to help her may very well feel a lot worse to her than you intend. Ultimately, you need to learn more about the condition and accept that you will have to take care of some of her needs from time to time. Else you need to reconsider the relationship. What you cannot continue doing is what you are doing. I have ADHD. It is not easy to accomplish simple tasks with ADHD, taking meds included. ADHD meds do have side effects which sometimes do more harm than good, and it is up to each person to decide what is best for them. And one of ADHD symptoms is executive dysfunction, which means she may know she needs her meds but going to take them is more overwhelming than to the normal person. I have to take meds daily not only for ADHD, and I still have a hard time doing it. You are her partner. You are supposed to help her. If taking care of her and helping her with her daily tasks she is unable to do by herself is not what you want, because it is a parent-child relationship, which I need to remind you, neurodivergent people are not children. Having difficulties is not being a child, and you are not the right guy for her and should just break up. Making her feel constantly frustrated, incapable, and insecure is not helping her. I mean, you know she has a diagnosed disability that means her brain doesn't always fire at the right time to connect the neurons to remember the right choices, and yours does, but you would rather sit by and watch her struggle rather than do something that comes easily to you and is barely an inconvenience. Can't you even just compromise and remind her about the pills in the morning? I have ADHD. I am a single parent to a daughter with ADHD. We cannot afford medication. We live by programming a lot of alarms into our phones and reminding each other of things. Things still sometimes get missed and lost and burned and lost. We both suffer stress and anxiety. Our lives are harder because of it. My daughter walked to the local shop to post a letter for me today. When she got to the shop she had to come back as she had put the letter down when she was making sure she had her keys. She gets stressed trying to make sure she has them as she has forgotten them many times. I would get home from work and she would be sitting on the doorstep. Once she waited 2 hours in the snow on a day she had also forgotten her coat, so she now panics until she finds them, causing her to put the letter down. Last week I went into work when it was my turn to have an afternoon off. These things are small, but when there are regular additional small things added to your life, there's that extra stress and anxiety, and that feeling that you have failed yet again to get a grip on life. It affects your self-esteem as well. If you care about her, then be a compassionate human being and remind her about her meds. At least, don't let her have to wait through treacle for the day when she doesn't have to. It is exhausting. You said you are trying to avoid falling into a parent-child dynamic, but you are being controlling and parent-like by issuing an ultimatum that your GF needs to be taking medication daily. You are assuming you know what is best for her and telling her she needs to do things your way. I have been taking medication for ADHD since 2008, and I have had countless physicians, pharmacists and psychiatrists all tell me that medication vacations are necessary and I should be taking a minimum of 1 or 2 days a week off meds. They are intense stimulants and take a toll physically and mentally. You say that occasionally she forgets to take meds, but other times she is choosing not to. Why do you feel like you are in a position to override her choices about taking an intense controlled substance, when her own actions are in accordance with well-known and widely accepted guidelines from experts? I do not want to read into your relationship at all, but it sounds to me like you are intentionally withholding support from your partner because you do not like the way she chooses to manage her neurological condition. If your partner was neurotypical, would you be treating her mistakes the same way you are now, or are you punishing her for something she cannot change about herself? And if you think, well, she can change this thing about herself if she takes her medication every day, then you are not actually accepting her for who she really is. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.